I've been wrestling with a story that we read a few weeks ago in our Hasidic Tales group. Rabbi Simcha Bunim set out on a journey. And because this was the 18th century, groups of people would charter a carriage, and that would take them from town to town. And because the roads were poor, sometimes you wouldn't make it to your destination by sundown, and the carriages would stop at inns to spend the night. So Simcha Bunim got onto a carriage with a collection of Hasidim. And as night began to fall, they stopped at an inn that was owned by a Jewish family. The innkeeper was delighted to have all these Hasidim at his inn, and he invited them to have dinner with him personally. So Simcha Bunim sat in the main room at the inn. And meanwhile, the other Hasidim were going in and out of the kitchen. And they were asking all kinds of questions about the meat that was going to be served to them there. Was the animal unblemished? What about the person who slaughtered the animal? Did he keep Shabbat? Was he expert in the laws of kashrut and keeping kosher? And how carefully had the meat been prepared in the inn? And oh, by the way, was the inn's kitchen ritually pure also? As the questioning got more and more intense, and as the innkeeper got more and more flustered, an old man dressed in stained traveling clothes, still holding a staff, spoke up from over by the fireplace. Oh, you Hasidim. You make a big to-do about making sure what you put into your mouths is clean. But you don't worry half as much about what comes out of them. Simcha Bunim was struck by this. He was about to reply, but the wayfarer had already disappeared. Because that's what Elisha does. And Simcha Bunim knew he had received the wisdom that he'd set out on his journey to receive. I love the story, especially because of that awesome zing that Elisha brings to the Hasidim. It's just a mic drop moment. I had first read the Hasidim as the bad guys in the story. They're selfish. They only care about their ritual observance. And as we studied it a little more closely, I remembered most Hasidic stories don't actually have villains in them. Instead, we're supposed to see ourselves in that story. And when we look at it closely, we can see the Hasidim were not intending to be hurtful to the innkeeper. They wanted to be sure that they could eat without compromising their spiritual life. The real issue was that the words that they used, especially words that were around a holy topic, were causing pain to other people. And that's what I've been struggling with. How often do we use words in our own lives as blunt means to an end, instead of remembering, as we discussed last night, that our words are delicate, they're powerful spiritual tools? How often do we speak without considering the impact of our words on the ones to whom they're addressed? The rabbis of the Talmud in Bava Batra say very explicitly that each and every one of us, everyone, causes pain to other people daily through lashon hara, through malicious speech. To the sages, our words are so powerful that even a snark, just a hint of pain, of careless speech, can cause deep pain. And that's an incredibly consistent theme throughout Jewish tradition. In another Talmudic discussion in Bava Metzia, the rabbis teach that humiliating someone publicly, literally causing their face to go white, is the direct equivalent of shedding their blood. They're just that explicit. An attack for the rabbis is an attack, whether it's physical or whether it's verbal. And that's where Judaism really feels like a counterculture movement. Generally, modern American culture downplays the power of words. And there was a moment this summer that really highlighted that tendency. Jason von Tatenhoff is a former spokesperson for the Oath Keepers. The Oath Keepers are a group described by the ADL as an anti-government extremist group who are associated with the militia movement and who were so active on January 6th that certain members of the Oath Keepers are in federal court today around their activities. Von Tatenhoff is doing tshuva. He's repenting of his former work, and he's speaking out against the group's racism and anti-Semitism. And incidentally, he said that it was the group's consistent Holocaust denial that was one of the straws that broke the camel's back. That's one of the reasons he turned from them. He said they're just not embracing reality. I have a lot of respect for what von Tatenhoff's doing, and quite honestly, he's chosen a very dangerous path to pursue. All that said, I was struck by how he minimized the power of his words. Here's what he said in an interview over the summer, back at the end of July. He said, I have these self-realization moments where I'm like, I helped these guys out. I helped spread their message. And yeah, it was just with words, but I've got to try to do something to make up for that in my own life. I find his teshuvah admirable, truly. And seen through the lens of the rabbis from Jewish tradition, we see there is no such thing as just words. Like we saw in the story from the inn, our words are potent. And like all powerful tools, our words can be put to constructive use, and they can also really harm if we use them without consideration and without due care. And while we may have no intention of causing injury, we're still responsible for damage that results, as the rabbi said, from that daily speech that results in harm. Maybe one of the reasons that so many of the shortcomings named in our Yom Kippur prayers are so connected to words is because words do strike so deeply, and because we do find ourselves harmed by them so often. We're called to use our words mindfully, and today especially, we are compelled to recognize when we have missed the mark. In this past year, more than a few members of our community have shared with me that they were hurt by the way that they were spoken to and spoken about by fellow congregants at Bethel. To paraphrase Ashamnu, one of the most powerful poems in our liturgy, which we recited last night, and which we'll recite again in just a few moments. We have been cruel. We have been hostile. We have scorned. We have ridiculed. And we have caused others to stumble. There's no need for specifics. Just as the rabbis teach, any of us could have spoken painful words on any day, often without ill intent or awareness of how they were received. And yet our words have caused injury, whether intended or not. Those exchanges hamper the unity and the functioning of our holy congregation. They contradict our vision of Bethel being a joyous place for us to grow together. And in these difficult times, they corrode the wonderful sense of refuge from the outside world that our community can offer. So today, we're called to recognize our words' power and to do our best to hold to that realization beyond the walls of our sanctuary and beyond the boundaries of this day of awe. So as our holy challenge for 5783, how are we to direct our speech towards healthful and constructive power at Bethel? I offer two thoughts. And the first one is a riddle. One of my cohort at the Clergy Leadership Incubator at a CLE shared with us that he'd been asked to name the holiest phrase in Judaism. What's the holiest phrase in Judaism? So we all gave him our answers. Mine was the Shema. And he said no, it was too obvious. And none of us could get it. And he said, yeah, we couldn't either when I had been asked that question. Here's what the answer was. Yehei Shemei Rabba Mevarach Li'olam Ul'alamei Alamayim. It's from the Mourner's Kaddish. It's the phrase that the congregation says after a mourner has recited the opening lines of the prayer. And its sanctity has nothing to do with what the words themselves mean, which is about the glorification of God. That's not why it's holy. The holiness implicit in those words has nothing to do with its definition. The reason it's the holiest phrase in Judaism is because it's a response to someone who's in pain. It's when a community says to a mourner, we see that you are hurting, and we want to give you the gift of our presence and of our attention and of our embrace. We're with you in your grief. You're not alone. The holiest phrase in Judaism helps create a perspective where we see one another truly as being made in the same divine image as one another, just like ourselves. And it offers us a moment to respond to someone else's need with care. We're affirming our love for one another in holy relationship. To paraphrase Simon and Garfunkel, that makes sure that we're not people who are talking without speaking or hearing without listening. Let's see our words as holy and use them with full deliberation and compassionate awareness of how they can embrace someone else. For me, often a mindfulness practice as simple as taking a breath before I say something important can help ground myself in that reality and help to bring about best outcomes. And that leads to the second way that we can use our words with holy intent. Today's an opportunity for cheshbon hanefesh, for deep soul searching. That's what we're about here. And as the rabbis taught, and as each and every one of us knows all too well, we get things wrong on occasion. That's life. And this day of Yom Kippur is set aside for us to check in with our heart and our souls to see, even if I was acting with the best of intentions, did my words cause pain to others? That's an essential part of the process of doing teshuvah, of mindfully turning to choose a new path to ourselves, a new way to relate to those around us. And when we identify moments where we can say, yeah, that was a difficult conversation. I wish I had handled that differently. We can then take action. We can turn to those whom we might have hurt and try to make matters right. Alternatively, if someone hurt you, consider reaching out to them. It's not easy. It requires more vulnerability, admitting hurt exactly at a time where we might want to armor ourselves more, like we were talking about at Rosh Hashanah. And yet that is one powerful way to achieve resolution. I can't always assume that the person who hurt me is aware of the effect of their words on me or the nature of the breach that our relationship suffered together. And conversely, if someone approaches you to share their feelings of pain, be willing to listen with open ears and open heart. And incidentally, that's the part that I often have the most trouble with. There's few things worse for me than learning that I've hurt someone when I hadn't intended any disrespect. That's not who I want to be. That's not how I want people to see me. I feel myself tensing up, feel myself wanting to run away. I want to deny I'd done anything hurtful. And still, in those moments, I have to acknowledge the pain that I've caused, intentionally or otherwise. And when I start to try to make things right, I feel that tension inside letting go. And instead of wanting to run away, I feel the blessings of renewed connection. Start to find some relief. It's important for our community's health for us to engage in this form of teshuvah together. We explored this idea of Rosh Hashanah when I told the story of the shofar and the bell. And we saw how when two people reach out to one another with care, blessings ripple to the whole community. And that's equally true now when we acknowledge pain that we may have received or caused. And when we open the door to blessing, to healing, that's another new way for us to enter the new year in wholeness. I often refer to Bethel as a loving community. In this new year, let's hold close to the reminder that part of what makes this congregation special is that we truly care for one another, for those around us. Let's see our fellow congregants as partners in the work of Tikkun Olam, working together to bring healing to our world. And when we disagree, which can be done l'shem shamayim, for the sake of heaven, we don't always need to see eye to eye. But let's do that by perceiving one another not as barriers to an objective, but rather as offering a different facet of Torah, bringing their own truth forward for us to study and explore with gratitude. May we, together, emerge from this holy day transformed, as careful of what comes out of our mouths as we are about what we put into them. May we emerge from this holy day affirmed, prepared to see ourselves and each other as being made in the same divine image. And may we emerge from this holy day prepared, ready to use our awesome power to shape our congregation and our communities for the better, eager to create a future illuminated with hope, with unity, and with love. King Yehi Ratzon.